for instance, relax is only a test website from Novartis, and I went through all that, the explanation, what it means to do a blood test and why the blood test is good for you, questions to ask. And I came away from this website telling myself, it's really not just a test. One of the most brilliant commercials during the last Super Bowl was this commercial right here. It's from Novartis, and they are trying to address a very, very complex problem. Because when it comes to preventive medicine, most men don't think it's important for them to get examined until there's something really serious, until there is a major problem. One of such areas in medicine is prostate cancer. In fact, 1 out of 8 men, according to statistics, most likely going to have some issue with prostate cancer in their lifetime. And if that is the case, it means that more men need to get tested, and more men need to understand, need to know, need to be aware of their status when it comes to prostate cancer. So this commercial from Novartis, brilliant, during the Super Bowl, uses the language of the Super Bowl, the tight ends position, to talk about the hesitation that most of us have as men when it comes to getting examined. You would ask, why do we not want to get tested? Well, from this commercial, the answer seems to be because we are afraid that we are going to get digitally examined by physicians. Because really, in the past, to get tested for prostate cancer, you would have to go to a physician desk who would physically insert their finger about 2 inches into your tight end, if you like, and to feel for condition to see if there are presentations that kind of strange. And that allows them to recommend maybe to go for biopsies or to do more tests. And so that situation in itself, it's not very nice for many men. It's not something they like to put themselves through. Well, according to this narrative, that most men are, hesitant to doing this preventive medicine because they feel that they will be emasculated. They wouldn't be touched unnecessarily by their physicians or their doctors or their medical providers. And so this is the answer. There is a PSA, abracadabra, a PSA test, and the campaign says relax, is only a test. Nobody's going to insert anything into your behind. You would be okay. So here is a question though. Is it only a test? Is the PSA only a test? From my experience, no, it's not only a test. This is the reason why so many campaigns or narratives or storytelling in a very complex environment like human body, climate change, social justice. This is the reason why many a times they get their eyeballs, they get their awards, they get talked about, like I am talking about it right now. But they do not often convert. They do not bring people to making that change that the campaign itself is designed to do. Yeah, there might be many objectives to measure. There might be so many things that we're measuring, like how many people saw the website, how many people went to the website. I went to the website, for instance, Relax is only a test website from Novartis, and I went through all that, the explanation, what it means to do a blood test and why the blood test is good for you, questions to ask. And I came away from this website telling myself, it's really not just a test. It's a beginning of a patient experience. Because if the likelihood is high, because 1 out of 8 men, that's a lot, that's very high probability. It means that after doing my test, there are chances that I will be diagnosed or I will need to see a physician. What then happens to me? Where do I go? Who is going to pay my bill? Who is going to take care of my family if I have to go away for chemotherapy? And who is manufacturing these drugs, these chemo drugs? Well, Novartis has drugs that treat prostate cancer. So, yeah. And you begin to see the complexity of this commercial in how, in this age and time, we as storytellers need to begin to reimagine how we tell stories in complex environments like healthcare. Because it's really not just about a test. It's about masculinity. It's about society. It's about government. It's about science. It's about so many things. Let's take it just one after the other. State. What is a state policy for a man who is taking a break from work, for instance, to go get tested, to go through their medication, to go through their chemo? Can they return back to work? Can employer allow you to get back? Can you take a long medical break? What happens to you? So there may be a stereotype of men don't want to get tested. It could be because they are the breadwinners and they don't want to stop because they have to pay a mortgage and they don't want to get bankrupt and they don't want to default their credit card. And so many things can happen. So it is much more complex than just getting tested. How does the state provide some form of support system for you? And what do you have access to? Who do you have access to? Number 2, science. When science say go get tested, I mean we see this in the HIV/AIDS campaign. Get tested, wear a condom. Many a time we realize that it's not as simple as that. It's not because many communities don't want to get tested. Many communities don't want to get tested perhaps because they don't trust science. They have looked at science over the years and they said science doesn't have good intention for our community, which is not always true. We know that science is science. Science evolves. Science is about research. It's about peer reviewing. And unfortunately, we're living in an age and time where people are not patient to see this research, the outcomes of this research. What do we have? We have wellness influencers who have PhD in every form of disease. I mean, there's so many disease experts on YouTube these days. And they tell you if you drink 10 gallons of olive oil, your prostate is going to get shrunk. If you drink water every 2 hours, you will not have prostate cancer. If you eat pepper, for Nigerians, if you eat a lot of pepper, very spicy, you would be fine. You will not have that. Why do you think we're seeing the proliferation of this? Because most people are realizing that maybe we should not trust science, because science in the past have told us things that they changed their mind over. But listen, isn't that supposed to be what science? Isn't that supposed to be science? Science is supposed to evolve. But what then is the problem with science? Maybe humility. Science doesn't ever want to admit that they are still studying this. This happened during COVID-19. So many things we learn about mask wearing that evolve, the mandates the guidelines, and people were confused. It wasn't the problem of science per se, it was how science positioned itself, it's the messaging. Remember what I define messaging to be. Messaging is how power chooses to explain itself to its audience. How do you explain that science is never conclusive? How do you explain that data is still coming in, especially for a disease or condition that we are all still finding out about? How do you make people feel they can rely on this body of evidence that if you do X, Y, Z, for now, best practices, promising practices are X, Y, Z. Instead of saying, A, we have a conclusive evidence that you should do a PSA test. Because you know what? We know that PSA test is not enough to catching a prostate cancer. No. Recent science shows that there are two types of PSA. There is a free PSA, there is a PSA. You know why I know this? I just went through this process myself. It is not that simple. Why didn't the science make this narrative a little simple for people? Go get tested. Go check yourself. No. What do we need to know? Is testing going to be enough? Or are there other things that we need to be aware of? Don't blame Novartis. This is a healthcare issue. This is a systemic issue. And I go to the next stage, which is storytelling. We as storytellers, whose perspective, from whose gaze are we painting these brushstrokes? From whose perspective are we constructing these narratives? Are we constructing this narrative from the perspective, for instance, of Novartis, of the data they give to us, or the board members who told us to create this campaign, or the advertising agency that hired us? Because it's all about maybe winning the awards during Super Bowl, of getting attention. Well, I have some news for us. We are living in age and time of AI, of machines, of robots. It means that information out there on the internet, it's not going to be that we are competing with arrays of wellness influencer, disinformation, misinformation, so many things happening out there. How do you storytell science, climate change, all of these issues in these days and time with integrity, with compassion, with ethics? And this is where we need to, for instance, maybe just peel back a little bit and realize that it is dangerous to propose a single story, to think that if you just get tested, you'll be fine. And this is where we need to build system. This is where storytellers need to move from just designing, constructing stories, narratives, commercials, to constructing systems, building feedback mechanism, building trust in the system, having conversation. And so when we tell people to go get tested for PSA, to know their status for prostate cancer, what is the state of prostate cancer today? What are people Googling when they Google prostate cancer, when they check their AI? What questions are they asking? This is a place where we need to have a conversation. And this is a place where we design stories not just for commercials, but we design them to address systemic issues. And as society, and I'm going to end here, as society, how do we facilitate a more compassionate environment for men who appreciate going to the hospital, for men who appreciate getting examined? How might we change the narrative that seeing a doctor, getting tested, it's a woman's thing.